When thinking of Belgium, most people likely imagine picturesque medieval cities, fine chocolate, and a rich selection of exquisite beers. Yet behind this idyllic facade, a darker reality has emerged in recent years. Belgium has become a hotspot for drug and gang violence in Europe. Shootouts, bombings, and even the attempted kidnapping of high-ranking politicians have become almost routine following the incursion of South American cartels. The situation may worsen further, leading many to speak of Belgium as the first European narco-state. But how did it come to this? How did gangs gradually infiltrate the state? Why has the country's security apparatus failed? And could Belgium truly become a narco-state? These are the pressing questions we will explore in today's analysis. Enjoy. The foundation for today's spiral of violence in this small country was laid toward the end of the last century, particularly with the rise of the Port of Antwerp. Belgium has always been in an ideal geographic position. Situated in the heart of Western Europe, between the continent's most powerful economies, namely Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, it developed into a key hub for trade and transportation across Europe. From Belgium, almost all European countries could be quickly reached, thanks in part to its excellent infrastructure, including an extensive highway network, modern rail connections, and highly developed port facilities. Moreover, Brussels became the heart of the European Union. This led to rapid economic growth, benefiting particularly the country's largest port, Antwerp. Over the past decades, the port expanded massively, becoming Europe's second most important port after Rotterdam. It now handles an annual cargo volume of over 200 million tons. Yet the massive flow of goods also attracted other players who saw the port's advantages. Due to its sheer size, over 120 square kilometers, it is nearly impossible to monitor. Additionally, it is obvious that not all of the millions of containers can be inspected. This allowed other, more dubious economic activities to take root, especially with the rise of cocaine flows into Europe. Initially, South American cartels focused primarily on North America, particularly the United States. However, beginning in the 1980s, their attention gradually shifted to Europe. Led by notorious figures such as Pablo Escobar and the Medellin cartel, they recognized the profit potential of the European market. In the upper echelons of wealthy metropolises like London, Paris, and Berlin, there was a high demand for the white powder. Europeans were even willing to pay more than Americans, making the trade highly lucrative despite the geographic distance. As a result, smuggling routes increasingly shifted toward Europe. Initially, these routes ran primarily through West Africa and then into southern Europe. However, with globalization and improved logistics during the 1990s, the routes moved directly to major markets in northern and western Europe. Antwerp's port quickly became an ideal entry point for the European market. As noted earlier, it is close to Europe's largest cities, where the main demand for cocaine exists. Despite the port's size and significance for international trade, there were few effective controls and monitoring measures which further facilitated the massive smuggling of illegal drugs. This security gap was immediately exploited by drug cartels, who used it to transport large quantities of cocaine, often hidden in legal cargo containers, into Europe unnoticed. Thus, in the shadow of Belgium's economic miracle, a parallel society and dark underworld began to develop. Authorities ignored the smuggling for a long time and, driven by efficiency, even indirectly encouraged it. The port became increasingly automated, and an extensive network of waterways, rail lines, and roads emerged, which was barely monitored. Dock workers, often earning less than minimum wage, were bribed with amounts equal to their annual salaries to turn a blind eye to certain containers. As a result, the port has become Europe's primary entry point for cocaine. Smuggling routes have grown increasingly efficient, with only about 1% of all containers inspected today. Drug trafficking gradually corrupted the entire population. When authorities cracked the communication of drug lords, Belgium's federal prosecutor described a corruption that reaches all levels of society and a world devoid of any moral compass. Numerous gangs now compete for the lucrative trade, increasingly challenging the state's monopoly on violence. Murders and shootouts on public streets have become more frequent. The violence peaked in 2022, when a gang nearly succeeded in kidnapping Belgium's justice minister. Such an act had been threatened for some time, and during a vehicle search near the minister's home, police discovered a car with Dutch license plates containing Kalashnikovs and petrol canisters. The trail quickly led to the cartels. The justice minister, Vincent van Quickenborne, had long been a target of the cartels. He was among the first to recognize the massive threat posed by these organizations. He strengthened the police force and prosecutors, which had been underfunded for years. He achieved a major victory when police hacked an encrypted communication service, leading to over 1,200 arrests in Belgium alone. Yet this also made him a constant target of threats against him and his family. The minister and his family were immediately relocated to an undisclosed safe house. His ability to carry out his duties is now severely limited, and he stated, "As long as I'm minister, I'll never be able to go to the bakery alone again." This shows just how far the violence has escalated in a constitutional state in the middle of Europe. So what is the Belgian government doing to address this? Customs received more than 100 new employees, and the public prosecutor's office was further strengthened. New scanners have also been purchased to inspect containers more frequently, authorities reported. Dock workers in Antwerp are also being subjected to stricter checks. However, for many observers, these measures seem like a drop in the bucket. The cartels and gangs have long infiltrated all levels of society, and drug smuggling continues to increase. Large-scale corruption facilitates this situation, according to the EU Monitoring Center. Dock workers, private businesses, and government employees are said to profit from drug trafficking. As a result, cartels no longer operate in secrecy, but openly wage gang wars on the streets. Antwerp police report that the cartels are running circles around them. Grenade attacks, intimidation, and murders have become common occurrences. Moreover, cocaine trafficking fosters other forms of crime, such as money laundering and real estate fraud. A vicious cycle. Authorities do occasionally manage record-breaking drug seizures. Last year alone, 116 tons of cocaine were confiscated in Antwerp, a new record. However, this record suggests that smuggling is actually increasing, as over 90% likely goes undetected. Criminologists warn that such seizures may even temporarily increase violence. When cocaine is confiscated, someone must pay for it, escalating gang violence even further. Currently, there is no positive outlook. The problem has permeated the state and society so deeply that it seems impossible to resolve quickly. This is why more and more experts are referring to Belgium as a narco-state. Belgium's chief federal prosecutor has raised the alarm, warning that the authorities are critically understaffed and that the mafia is gradually taking over the country. Johan Delmoule, Brussels' chief prosecutor, also sees the danger of Belgium becoming a narco-state. He points to the increasingly violent competition among clans and other criminal organizations. Nevertheless, Belgium is still far from the conditions seen in actual narco-states like Colombia, Honduras, or Guatemala. Many citizens hope that the upcoming election could bring a turning point for the country. Many political parties are campaigning on a tough stance against drug violence and cartels. Whether these proposals will succeed remains to be seen, as many of the problems discussed cannot be resolved quickly. German port cities like Hamburg and Bremerhaven are closely monitoring the situation, as cocaine smuggling is also increasing there. When one country cracks down harder on the cartels, they do not disappear, but instead seek alternative smuggling routes into Europe. For instance, when the Netherlands increased controls, more smuggling shifted to Belgium. Belgium's justice minister has already warned German cities of an impending rise in drug trafficking. Invest early in proper surveillance, he advised. This will expose vulnerabilities in time. If such problems remain under the radar for too long, they can infect the entire economic structure. According to the minister, a lasting solution can only be achieved collectively within a European framework.